be a step in proving that there is normalcy coming back in Kashmir. I have to end on that note. News Epicenter is coming up next.
Hello everyone, you're watching News Epicenter with me, Maria Shakil. External Affairs Minister Dr. S Jaishankar has sent a message to Rahul Gandhi and George Soros in a recent interview to ANI's Smita Prakash. Countering Rahul Gandhi's claim that the Modi government has ceded land to the Chinese, Jaishankar asserted that the Prime Minister has pushed the largest peacetime deployment at the line of actual control, that is the LAC. Slamming opposition attacks over border skirmishes, Jaishankar pointed out that the Modi government has actually established peace and security at the LAC, unlike the previous regimes, despite the provocations of the Chinese military. Jaishankar also hit back at billionaire George Soros over his recent criticism of Prime Minister Modi over the Adani-Hindenburg controversy, claiming election season seems to have kicked off in the West. He called Soros an old, opinionated and dangerous person who always indulges in scaremongering, claiming the timing is not accidental, highlighting the upcoming G20 summit in New Delhi and the 2024 general elections next year. The External Affairs Minister has always delivered fiery counters to the government's critics. So the question that we are asking is, has he silenced them once again and also highlighted the skewed Western narratives mobilized against the centre and the country?
If we were being accommodative, who sent the Indian army to the LAC? Rahul Gandhi didn't send it. Narendra Modi sent it. We are debating actually politics which is being conducted ostensibly as media, as so there is a phrase, war by other means. There is also, think of it, this is politics by another means. You'll do a hatchet job, then you want to do a hatchet job and say, well, this is just another quest for truth which we decided after 20 years to put out at this time. So come on, you think the timing is accidental? Let me tell you one thing. I don't know if election season has started in India and Delhi or not, but for sure it has started in London and New York.
RP Singh, BJP spokesperson, joining me live. Sujata Paul, spokesperson of the Congress Party. We also have Ashok Sajanhar, former diplomat. Smita Prakash, editor of ANI, and Ainar Tangent, political affairs commentator, joining me from Beijing. Smita Prakash, beginning with you, all questions asked and all answered. He is not a minister who minces words. What makes Jaishankar dabble between domestic politics, because he trained his guns at Rahul Gandhi directly, and diplomacy with such elan? This is a question to someone who has tracked his years as a diplomat as well.
Yeah, he does mince his words actually. A typical diplomat, he takes a little time to get around to speaking. He has become a politician, Maria, so there are times where he talks directly, but otherwise, like any diplomat, he talks in larger terms. He doesn't go into very specific attacks. You'll notice that for me to get him to speak, it took a little while. So it was a kind of a longish podcast. He did get down to it ultimately when he spoke about the attacks on India, which he said were political in nature, and he said that nothing is coincidental. It's all well thought out. He didn't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, he says, but he says that join the dots. It's not as if these attacks are happening because there is no election happening. Of course, it's connected to the elections, is what he said.
So elections, it's timed with the elections. The question then is, Sujata Paul, how many clarifications will the opposition need from the centre when it comes to the situation at the LAC? The view would certainly be that, are you guilty of falling prey to propaganda then?
no matter what Mr. Jaishankar has to say, the fact is that you could see that he's got a personal problem also. I do understand that, and I was expecting better, frankly, and he's talking about politics coming from outside. I was amazed at how he's pointing fingers at somebody outside. In the last 70 years, it didn't happen, but after Modi came, yes, politics outside is what politics inside the country
But Sujata
depends
Paul,
on.
didn't Indira Gandhi famously talk about the foreign hand? How do we forget
about
that?
Foreign hand, but not in elections. Not in elections. He's talking about everything is happening today. Everything that the problems that Mr. Modi is facing, he says, are due to elections happening in other countries. I mean, what kind of logic is that? Now, he might have made a claim about sending, army to the LAC, but is he trying to say that he knows everything? He has to come out and tell us what this claim is, that, a huge number of troops have been sent to LAC. Now, let me also tell you, Maria, that when he talks about army being sent over there at a huge cost with great effort, I would like to remind you of what happened to the Standing Committee of Defense when Major General B.C. Kanduri from the BJP was heading it. He was thrown out of the standing committee because he demanded greater budget for the defense. That speaks for itself. So when you talk about your infrastructure spending, like he said, that it is 5 times. Yes, it might be 5 times, but that is all that they know. And you know what has happened to the Char Dham route, the cracks which are happening in Joshimath. Let us connect the dots and you will understand that what he is talking about was not really making any sense. I want to understand where was the Lal Aankh? He's saying that I find
Smita Prakash, where is the Lal Aankh? Is what the Congress party is asking. Did you see that Lal Aankh in your interview?
I can't understand. No, Jaishankar doesn't do Lal Aankh. That's not him. That's not his style. He, in fact, even when I try to say something about, why is it that India is the only one who keeps up with, the agreements that we sign, whereas the other side, which is China, it doesn't keep up to it. So at that time, he said that, don't expect us. It has, the reason that India signs agreements is to keep with the agreement. We sign it, we stand by our word. So it's not as if that's not our track record. And he said that regardless of which government comes to power in India, we stand by our words and that's our reputation. As far as the, I don't understand what Lal Aankh is supposed to mean. I don't think the foreign minister shows Lal Aankh. I don't know. I mean, I don't expect the foreign minister of India to ever show Lal Aankh anywhere.
Okay, RP Singh, that was a political point that has been made by Sujata Paul, of course. But the larger question then is that here is Dr. S Jaishankar, who has been giving responses, and today he again was at his fiery best in that interview with Smita Prakash. But the question that is being asked by the opposition and particularly by the Congress is that is it only loud words or big words?
Well, first, let me clarify on that Lal Aankh. I mean, I have seen that Chora Ghopne Wala Haath. They have signed an agreement with Communist Party of China and they come and talk about Lal Aankh and all. When they took money from Communist Party of China, the embassy here, for the Rajiv Gandhi Foundation, and they talk about Lal Aankh. I mean, and they speak the language of the Communist Party of China, or they reiterate whatever Global Times feed is being given to them, and they come and speak only that what is required by the Global Time for them to speak. But that point aside, I mean, do you remember Anthony Saab's speech in the Parliament, 2014, if I rightly remember, April 2000, just a session before the election in Parliament? He said, we are not building infrastructure on the China border. We are scared that if we build infrastructure on the China border, China will come and use that infrastructure. But that was the thought process of the Congress Party, UPA regime, that, we should not even touch China, we should not even think about building infrastructure. In the last 8 years, infrastructure has been built all around the China border. Not only that, deployment has been made there all around, in all sectors, right from Arunachal to Ladakh.
Okay, let's listen in to what Dr. S Jaishankar actually told Smita Prakash when specifically asked about the line of actual control, and then I'll go back to the panelists.
Why can we not come to an agreement on where is the boundary, how many rounds of talks, and it's non-conclusive?
Because when people are their claims, when any other country's claims are not reasonable, you will not come to agreement. I mean, you and I can come to an agreement. If I make claims on you which are not reasonable, but you will concede it because 25 rounds have happened. You have to look at, what is being discussed as well, no?
Right.
So,
Okay.
So look, if I were to sum up the China thing, I mean, please do not, buy this whole, I would say, again, I use this word, this narrative that somewhere government is on the defensive, somewhere we are being accommodative. I mean, I ask people, if we were being accommodative, who sent the Indian army to the LAC? Rahul Gandhi didn't send them. Narendra Modi sent them. Okay? We have today the largest peacetime deployment in our history on the China border. Okay? And we are keeping troops there at a huge cost with great effort. We have increased our infrastructure spending on the border 5 times in this government. So now tell me, who's the defensive, accommodative person? In fact, the question you should ask is, who's actually telling the truth, who's depicting things accurately, who's playing footsie with history? I think those are the questions which should be asked.
Aina Tangent, given the escalation of the situation at the LAC, my question is, why have multiple corps commander level talks failed to get consensus from the Chinese side in particular? Because if anything, this is an expansionist China. Is this going to be the new normal?
Well, you have your own perspective about it. Obviously, India sees China as the difficult one. China sees India as the difficult one. China has said from its side that it wants to settle the issue. They want a global settlement. From India's point of view, it's not clear what they want other than little bits of territory. There's been talk about Arunachal Pradesh and taking lands back that are currently under Chinese control. That's not helpful. So if it is meaningful, there has to be an overall strategy right now from China's perspective. He doesn't know what India wants. It's waiting. It'll be patient. But, the internal politics of what you're talking about are internal to India and not something that China is concerned about. But I would draw one issue. I mean, while Jaishankar is defending his China policy and, each side is trying to use China as a political card, the fact is there doesn't seem to be a lot of overall strategy. What is the Indian foreign policy? You have China coming out with their global security initiative, talking about a global compact. India has not responded to it, nor has it put forward its own. And I think, India is a big nation. It needs to start thinking about these things beyond just, minor border issues, to start thinking about the kind of world that it wants to be part of.
Okay. India certainly sending a message that it could very well be the architect of the new world order. The other part of this interview of Smita Prakash with Dr. S Jaishankar was Dr. S Jaishankar talking about how for the world, the elections for 2024 have begun. Ashok Sajanar, from the BBC documentary to what George Soros has said, which ends up becoming a political flashpoint, is information warfare something we must treat as a security and diplomatic challenge then? And that's what he certainly hinted at.
No, absolutely. Maria, I quite agree with what Dr. Jaishankar has said. And I think this was also, this whole issue about the information warfare and how people in India need to be careful and cautious about it was also raised by the Vice President, Shri Dhankar, when he was speaking to the Information Service officials. This is definitely true. I think all these issues that we've raised about the BBC documentary coming out 20 years after the incident took place, taking no cognizance, no notice of what has happened in India during these 20 years, that the matter has been discussed threadbare as far as the Supreme Court is concerned. The Supreme Court has given a clean chit to the Prime Minister, to the then Chief Minister of Gujarat. No cognizance of all that. How did this all start?
Yes.
So it is a motivated, it is a biased reportage, and there is nothing new that has been brought out. So obviously the timing is very, very suspect. And, this starts from London. And of course, from New York, we have George Soros coming out during the Munich Security Conference and coming out very openly that, they want to have a change in the government. So, when the BBC documentary had come out, Maria, I think on your channel, I had said, this is not going to be the end of it. This is not the last that we are seeing of this. This is going to repeat itself in multiple ways. And we have seen that, whether it is this, even as far as this Hindenburg report, let it be investigated. I would leave it to that at the moment. But the manner in which it has come out, I think that also raises a large number of doubts. I think we are going to see much more of all of this in the coming weeks and months. And India needs to be prepared for all that. And I'm glad that Dr. Jaishankar has flagged this issue.
Yes. The point that is being made here, Sujata Paul, by Dr. Jaishankar is also, which will bring me to my very innocent question. Has it ever happened that Indian billionaires or businessmen have made such vicious comments against leaders of other countries? And here is George Soros saying such a thing, and the entire Indian polity or the political class should be speaking in one language, that you cannot interfere with what is a democratic process in our country.
How does it matter what George Soros has to say?
It does matter because he is seen as someone who funds several NGOs. He is seen as someone who has pledged $1 billion for what he says is to fight against rising nationalism, and in that he singled out Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
I don't know why you need to be so defensive, or any one of us have to talk about George Soros. He's a 92-year-old man, and that's where we should leave him. Where he invests his money has nothing to do with us. What organizations he runs or what he's part of, how does it matter to India? India is too strong for a 92-year-old man making any kind of claim. This is India, and our internal matters are ours. But let's not make a mockery of ourselves by trying to defend what somebody outside is saying. For example, the BBC documentary. Why are we going so defensive about it? If the Prime Minister got a clean chit, then that's where it should stop. Why are they going around raiding the BBC office? And mind you, as far as the problems are concerned within the country, we need to sort them out. But when you talk about the 2002 riots, somebody has to take responsibility for the people who died at that time. And of course, it will always be the Chief Minister. It doesn't matter whether he's been given a clean chit. That's a separate thing. We respect that. We respect that he got a clean chit. But is somebody going to take responsibility for the people who died? And it's always going to be the leader who has to do that. Another thing, we were talking about, what happened in Pangong, etc. Now tell me, what happened on 15 June 2020 was the bloodiest exchange that happened.
I'm going to bring it back to my question that I've asked, Sujata. I've asked about the narrative, and this is a narrative war or information warfare which has begun much before the 2024 elections. Let me get a response from RP Singh. Please go ahead, RP Singh.
Well, I'm shocked at this, Maria, that the way he's narrating 2002. I mean, in spite of the fact they're saying that, okay, Supreme Court has given a clean chit and
so nobody died. No role to play. Nobody will take responsibility. Somebody has to take responsibility, Mr. RP Singh. There were people who died. None to take responsibility. If you had a BJP government, the BJP government will have to take responsibility for the people who died. For the people who died.
Sujata Paul,
it is always the government which takes responsibility.
Can we go with what the Supreme Court has said? What the Supreme Court has said, is that more critical for our country, or what a BBC documentary is saying, which is not even presenting the truth? Okay, RP Singh. Okay, let's listen from RP Singh. Yes.
Rajiv Gandhi is directly involved in butchering 3006 in Delhi. And the court is still investigating that matter. Court is still under the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. SIT has filed a report. CBI court is still following up the case of Mr. Tiger, who's your best friend, who's your best bedfellow of of the dynasty. And also, what about Sajjan Kumar? I mean, people who killed and butchered. Read GPS Sidhu's book on Khalistan conspiracy. He categorically stated that Rajiv Gandhi was leading the gang which killed and butchered 3006 in Delhi. So you have no right to talk about anything after the Supreme Court has given a clean chit to the Prime Minister, then CM of Gujarat. So you are intentionally doing, and I'm saying it on record, there are countries like China and Pakistan, there are corporations like BBC, there are NGOs like Amnesty International,
Removing me from the screen is not going to help.
allow me to complete. Just hold your breath. Edinburgh and also people like Soros and parties like Congress and Mandal parties, they can't defeat Prime Minister Modi through ballot. That's why they are trying to get this ecosystem for 2024. Mark my word, people will give you a befitting reply. People of India will give you a befitting reply. People of India will give befitting reply to butchers of the sect.
Okay, I have just enough time for the final word from Smita Prakash. Smita Prakash, two big headlines, and I'm going to play that Soros bite again, for the viewers before I come to you. Let's listen into what the External Affairs Minister had to say in the context of the narrative setting by the West.
Many say that ban this and ban that. Do you believe that that is a solution to it? Banning a documentary here, banning a book there, asking a channel not to broadcast in India?
No. Look, I don't think that you are asking the right question. I'd ask you a counter question. What is it we are debating? We are not debating just a documentary or a speech that somebody gave in a European city or
New York.
a newspaper edit somewhere. We are debating actually politics which is being conducted ostensibly as media, as so there is a phrase, war by other means. There is also, think of it, this is politics by another means. But you'll do a hatchet job. Then you want to do a hatchet job and say, well, this is just another quest for truth which we decided after 20 years to put out at this time. So I mean, come on, you think the timing is accidental? Let me tell you one thing. I don't know if election season has started in India and Delhi or not, but for sure it has started in London and New York.
So the election season has begun, and if anything, Smita Prakash, according to Dr. S Jaishankar, this is war by other means.
Yeah. No, he said like the term war by other means, there's also politics by other means, and there he drew the parallel. Now, the thing is that it'll be naive to think that just because Soros is an old man, he's not a dangerous man. Of course, he's dangerous. His age doesn't matter. The fact that he pumps in billions of dollars into companies which set narratives abroad, and that gets churned into our echo chambers in our country. To think that narratives do not matter, Maria, is really being naive. For years in Kashmir, our narrative on Kashmir, our voice on Kashmir was not heard in the world. It was Pakistan's words which were heard. Their narrative was what was listened to, and it was not ours. So unless we are effective with our narrative, that's what matters. Now I'm talking about a separate thing. When it comes to politics, it doesn't really suit some people about what India is doing. The political commentator you had just now, earlier before me, he said the same thing, that he says, if China has its point of view clear, India is muddled. If anybody says today that India is muddled as far as foreign policy is concerned, they need to think again, because I don't think India has ever been so much at the high table as it is today. India's voice is heard everywhere, from West Asia to East Asia, from the Atlantic to Australia. We are there at all these forums. We are there in Quad, we are there in BRICS, we are there in several, in G20. I can start naming several of them. We are heard, our voice is heard. So to say that our foreign policy is confused is extremely wrong. And that, why do people say that? Those who are saying it are the people who are getting fed this narrative, which is being funded by people who want that confused narrative to come across.
So this is narrative war, Ashok Sajanhar, and the point here is that we have heard it in the past. Here is the government which is saying clearly that they are preparing themselves for a bigger battle that will not be played domestically between the BJP and other parties in opposition. It will be coming from an enemy of this nature, which will be trying to, paint India in a particular way, because that is a convenient narrative which has been set so far about India, about various decisions that have been taken by the Indian government in the past.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Maria. I quite agree with what you have said, with what Smita Prakash has said. This is a narrative war and we need to be ready for it. And I don't think, we can be ready by just reacting and responding to what is being churned out by the others, by the outsiders. We have to create our own narrative, and we have to create a credible narrative. Our narrative is very strong, but this gentleman from China who was saying, basically, I think our position has been very clear on settling the border. It is, if they don't want to take cognizance of what we are saying, then they will come out with arguments like this. But they don't hold water, and we have been telling them, it's very, very clear. Like with Pakistan, we say no terror, we'll talk with you. As far as China is concerned, you disengage, de-escalate.
Yes.
And that is not what they are prepared to do. After all, Maria, it was China that broke the agreements of 93 and 96.
That's right.
And brought in 50,000 troops on the LAC and brought in so many of their equipment and aircrafts. So I think they are the ones who have broken the agreement. But coming back to your question, yes, it is a narrative war. We need to be ready, we need to be prepared, and we need to create our own credible, strong narratives and go out into the world with that.
All right, thank you so much.
How India is doing in terms of dealing with the pandemic, dealing with the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And, what he was saying about that China has come with this global initiative. India has come out with its own motto of G20, one earth, one family, one future. And we don't
it becomes very, very crucial, because this is the year of India's G20 presidency, and India is certainly setting the narrative here. Smita Prakash, I appreciate your time. Ashok Sajanhar, Sujata Paul, RP Singh, and our tangent, thank you so much. Shifting focus to debate 2. Kerala Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan has stoked a row on the triple talaq ban. Pinarayi Vijayan claims that the law has made divorce criminal for Muslims alone, calling it discriminatory and anti-Muslim. He claims the law was brought in to target Muslims similar to the Citizenship Amendment Act, adding that the Kerala government stands against all forms of discrimination. The BJP has lashed out at Vijayan, calling his stand vote bank politics, accusing the Chief Minister of not being aware of the social malaise of triple talaq, ignoring the plight of its victims. Remember, in 2019, the Modi government cleared the triple talaq ban via Parliament, while the Supreme Court made it clear that the practice of instant divorce is unconstitutional and it violates fundamental rights of Muslim women, namely the right to equality, and added that it is not integral to religious practice. So given the clear judicial stand on triple talaq and the scores of voices that we have heard in which Muslim women have raised their voice against it, is the Chief Minister of Kerala guilty of playing communal politics?
വിവാഹമോചനം എല്ലാ വിഭാഗത്തിലും നടക്കുന്നുണ്ടല്ലോ, അതെല്ലാം സിവിലായിട്ടാണല്ലോ കൈകാര്യം ചെയ്യുന്നത്. മുസ്ലിമിന് മാത്രം എങ്ങനെ ക്രിമിനൽ കുറ്റമാകുന്നു? അപ്പോ വിവാഹമോചനത്തിന്റെ പേരിൽ മുസ്ലിം ആയാൽ ജയിലിലാണ്.
I don't know why Pinarayi Vijayan doesn't read the Quran, because he seems to have become an expert in all religions and especially in Quran. Pinarayi Vijayan is trying to get the Muslim votes. I mean, he's been playing up to the communal forces.
Joining me now, Vinita Hariharan. She is State Vice President, Mahila Morcha of the BJP. And we also have Professor Dinesh Varshney, JNU professor and leader of CPI. Professor Varshney, Citizenship Amendment Act, triple talaq, all these are issues which are polarizing and divisive. And who is raising it in Kerala? It is the Chief Minister himself. then why do you accuse the BJP of doing politics of polarization?
Look, Maria Shakil, first of all, everybody knows that who polarizes the society on the basis of religion. It is the BJP. Everybody knows why have they brought the CA and NPR, all these things. Secondly, I would like to put it into the perspective. What Comrade Pinarayi Vijayan has said correctly. You see, try to understand philosophically how law came into the existence of society. By the first code of law by Susa Code of Law and Hammurabi Code of Law, these two laws, these code of law. Always the traditions are taken into consideration by framing the law by the state.
Professor Varshney, in 2019, it was not the Supreme Court but the Parliament of India in which all MPs stood against triple talaq. And it is about that instant talaq or divorce. It is not about all forms of divorce that are practiced among the Muslims. What is wrong has to be condemned across party lines. If it is not politics, then what is driving Mr. Pinarayi Vijayan to raise it at this point, 4 years after it has been passed by Parliament and endorsed by the Supreme Court?
Look, Supreme Court says the instant triple talaq. Supreme Court does not say criminalization of the talaq. Where have you made the criminalization of talaq in other communities? No other nation has done it, even the Muslim nation. What are you talking? How can you deny away the role of the teacher? You literate the society.
You know, Professor Varshney, I'm from the Muslim community and I know what it means to see those women who have been victims of triple talaq. My question then to you is that is there a disconnect? And if anything, is this pure politics keeping in mind what the questions that have been raised? You know, that the relation between Jamaat-e-Islami and RSS, you can talk about that. But why bring the Muslim women as the talking point in this entire debate? You know, Vinita, the point being made here is about civil nature of a crime or a criminal nature of a crime. Only among the Muslims is this a criminal offence, while in other cases, when divorce happens, it is a civil case. This is what is being said, and one may say it's a valid question to ask.
No, I think it's a gross misinterpretation of the entire triple talaq, the anti-triple talaq bill. So the triple talaq itself is an inhuman and unconstitutional act wherein the husband is just allowed to just 3 times just voice triple talaq, and the Muslim woman is left, completely at bay, out of her house, out of her, her allowances, her living, everything. She's in distress. And the triple talaq actually protects these women from such inhuman acts done by men against Muslim women. And it's about the concept of giving a divorce just...
no, but why criminalize it? The point that is being made here is, of course, it is a divisive point to raise. If anything, if the CPI or CPIM or Mr. Pinarayi Vijayan had issues with it or reservations to it, 4 years after it was endorsed and passed by the Parliament of India, he can challenge it in the Supreme Court. Why make it a political issue?
All opposition parties other than BJP objected to this form of criminalization of the instant triple talaq.
Raise it in the Supreme Court, sir. You have an option of taking the entire issue before the Supreme Court. Do it.
We are not against stopping the triple talaq, or we are not. We said stop criminalization of this thing. You have not done it in other communities. Law cannot be static. Law has to be lubricative in matters of social concerns, in matters of tradition taken into consideration. This is historically exist in every law of every country, every code of law.
Professor Varshney, I think it would be best if a political point is made, the manner in which it should be that the bigger threat to the CPIM right now is Jamaat-e-Islami, which is being seen as the extreme view, the radical view among the Muslims, a view which is often rejected by several progressive Muslims, than yours, because you have been seen as towing the centrist line. Is that the threat? Because you understand that Jamaat-e-Islami may be standing with the minorities.
Look, whether it is Jamaat-e-Islami, whether it is RSS, whether it is Shiv Sena, or whether it is Hindu Sena, or whatever these Senas which BJP, RSS has created, we have clear-cut ideological fight against that, and that will continue. We care to hoots whether it is Kerala or India. We fought against them, We will fight against them. We have fought against them during independence struggle. That is not a problem to us. Our problem is, for a state, all subjects should be equal. Either A or
I think
B
you
or
should
C
ask
or-
Muslim women before taking their brief, because I want to understand from you, Vinita, Jamaat-e-Islami holding talks with RSS, whose brief were they holding or carrying?
See, the BJP is right now BJP has always, not right now, has always been in favor of bringing all communities together, whether it be their economic policies or their programs or their social programs. It is for all citizens, and no other community has been benefited by the banning of the triple talaq than the Muslim women. There has been a reduction of 82% in triple talaq cases, and triple talaq itself is such an inhuman act. Even Muslim countries like Egypt, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Syria, Malaysia, they've all declared it as illegal and un-Islamic. Then why are we protecting such an illegal, act in the country? And the community that has benefited the most are the Muslim women themselves. If you can interview some Muslim women and see the reactions from them and how positively they have taken this. And there is a subsistence allowance now being given for even if you divorce a Muslim woman, the man cannot just go scot-free. He has to give a subsistence allowance. He has to take care of the wife. And so this is how the divorces happen even in other communities. So why should the Muslim women suffer alone? So this is an absolutely inhuman act, and it's absolutely right. And
No, but Vinita, don't you see that there is a political opportunity for you? If anything, the battle lines are being drawn by the CPI, by the left party, that it will be an ideological war in Kerala. And as far as the centrist parties like the Congress and others are concerned, they'll not find a place here. Either you're with us or against us. That is the narrative that is being set here.
No, if you remember, back in 1986, the Congress backed out. They wanted to put this, but then they had to do appeasement politics, and they had to withdraw this. But we took a very courageous stand, and we went for the protection of the Muslim women, despite all political or whatever gains or losses we would have. We went above that, and we went to protect the Muslim women. So
yes, Vinita, the question
women,
is,
but every other
was it a regressive practice? Yes. Was it anti-Islamic? Yes. And if any political party, any government has done away with something that most Muslim women who had suffered it have spoken against it, then I think likes of Professor Varshney and other politicians should be standing with the direct beneficiaries of this decision, that is the Muslim women. Thank you so much for your time, Professor Varshney, and also Vinita. Shifting focus now to the third story on News Epicenter. Amidst the war in Ukraine and US President Joe Biden's message to the Russian government, Putin has said that Russia should stand ready to resume nuclear weapons tests, announcing the suspension of its participation in the New START treaty, the last remaining nuclear arms control pact with the US. After the United States announced a $500 million arms package for Ukraine, Putin accused it of openly declaring its goal of inflicting a strategic defeat to take control of Russian nuclear facilities. Putin argued that while the US has pushed for the resumption of inspections of Russian nuclear facilities under the START treaty, NATO has helped Ukraine mount drone attacks on Russian air bases. The New START treaty, signed in 2010 by US President Barack Obama and Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, limits each country's nuclear arsenal. The agreement also mandates on-site inspections to verify compliance. Just days before the treaty was due to expire in February 2021, Russia and the US agreed to extend it for another 5 years. But in the middle of the Ukraine conflict, has Putin sent the nuclear alarms ringing once again?
В этой ситуации Министерство обороны России и Росатом должны обеспечить готовность к испытанию российского ядерного оружия. Первыми мы, разумеется, этого делать не будем. Но если США проведут испытания, то и мы проведем. Ни у кого не должно быть опасных иллюзий, что глобальный стратегический паритет может быть разрушен.
Joining me now, Alona Shukrum is a Ukrainian member of parliament. We also have Dr. Sergey. He is the president of IDC Russia and director WHD International Board. Dr. Sergey, it's a direct threat. And Vladimir Putin here hasn't really camouflaged the way he looks at this war and the role of the West. So, is the world now prepared for what will be an evident escalation of this war?
First of all, we can see that escalation, it's not coming from Russian side. During the visit of Joe Biden yesterday to Poland, we can see that the American leader start with the words that he will increase financial support and weapon support of Ukraine, and he didn't say anything about peacemaking dialogue. Before election, we can see that he was very cruel, he was very close heart, because he didn't mention about any particular possibility to put both sides to the table of conversation, of negotiate peace. We can see that it's only Russian reply to the current situation. During that, leaders of Western countries, they put sanction on Russia, but frankly speaking, they put sanction on their own population, because we can see it's like psychology effect that all population of Europe are suffering a lot without energy. All European countries, they have a protest movement right now in France, for example, and all Western media, they try to be quiet about this. But frankly speaking, we can see that Russia never was in some aggressive. Our reason to only security of our own nation. That is a main reason of special operation in Ukraine.
But Dr. Sergey, here is Vladimir Putin, who says that Russia has been a patient negotiator, but if anything, US and the world is seeing Russia as an aggressor.
Yes, that is a blind vision of Western politicians, because we can understand right now that during all the history, we have a lot of challengers. It's a not quite new situation for us. Who was a main, we can say, winner, and which country did a lot contribution during Second War to defeat Hitler, to defeat this fascism. Of course, it was Russia. Everybody knows.
Alona,
everybody knows.
The entire world was watching this State of the Nation address, because it was coming just ahead of the first anniversary of Moscow's offensive in Ukraine. But this point that has been made by Vladimir Putin, in which he says they want to inflict a strategic defeat on us and try to get to our nuclear facilities at the same time. He is saying clearly that the West is hypocritical, and if anything, he has not started the war. The war was started from the other side. How is this being viewed by Kyiv?
Well, it is not the question how it is being viewed by Kyiv. It is the question of black and white, of the reality, because I am a Ukrainian. I live in Kyiv. I was in Kyiv when the war started. I've heard bombs on top of my apartments. I was under the bombs. I've seen, people be raped and killed during this year. Everyone in the world and the General Assembly of the UN and all of the other international organizations said a year ago and during this year that Putin should stop his aggression, that he should take the sovereignty of Ukraine seriously, that he should abide by international law. He did not. He is leading, a wannabe empire neo-colonial war. Hopefully it is the last neo-colonial war, but he wants Ukraine to be the colony, and not just Ukraine, but a lot of countries that broke and became independent after the Soviet Union. Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, Belarus. He thinks that we are a colony and he is an empire. And the colonial policy and the empire policy should have been left in the 19th century. We should have never come to that. But Putin wants to turn the time backwards, and he does that. He lies. He makes the propaganda. And obviously, because he's doing an aggressive war, because he's killing civilians, because he killed women and children in Ukraine and continue to do so even today in Kherson, he's bombing the Kherson. Obviously, he needs propaganda machine to work inside of Russia. But I think everybody in the world, including the global south, including India, know very well what he's doing.
Yes.
And that's why overwhelmingly the world is voting in the UN Assembly and in other organizations for this war to stop.
Also of information. And what here is Vladimir Putin, of course, speaking to his audience, the domestic audience. Yeah. He says Ukraine and Donbass have become a symbol of total lies. And he has accused the West of withdrawing from fundamental agreements and giving hypocritical statements, and covering us with an umbrella. The fact is that despite all sanctions against Russia, Vladimir Putin is not backing off. He is continuing with the aggression. And if anything, today's address clearly shows that he is upping the ante.
For me, the today address shows that he is losing, actually. And he knows that he is losing. That's why he needs a propaganda machine. The only resort he ever had 6 months ago, 3 months ago, and the only resort he has now is the threat of nuclear. But we know that if a country who is a nuclear country will do something against a country which is not nuclear, because Ukraine gave up voluntarily the nuclear weapons, and you know that in 1991 we gave up the weapons, the nuclear weapons, voluntarily. If the country who is a nuclear state attacks us, I think this would be the last drop to destroying the whole architecture of international peace all over the world. And I'm sure that India will not let it go, as it will not be forgotten by any nuclear state in the world, because the balance actually that we've had, it was not a great balance, but at least it was some kind of balance, was based on those nuclear agreements. And Russia as a nuclear state is threatening us who do not have nuclear powers to just destroy us with nuclear. Obviously, the world cannot just look at that. And we do actually thank India, because Indian parliamentarians often vote in favor of Ukraine and in support of Ukraine, and say that Russia is an aggressive state in a number of international forums. I think we are coming back to this point where Putin has nothing else to say other than the threat of nuclear, and obviously he should be stopped, because even the threat of nuclear, it is not normal. It is, the topping point of all that we've had during this horrible year. So you are seeing this
as a tipping point. Dr. Sergey, is this more of a desperate messaging that is coming from Moscow?
No, that message which was spoken by Vladimir Putin, it's our reply for the challengers, new challengers. We can see that right now is not a war between Russia and Ukraine. First of all, that is a conflict of civilization. Western part of the world, superforce, American politicians, which involved all European political leaders to this conflict, particular conflict. It's usually the practice of American policy to do something not directly.
As a Ukrainian woman, I will not listen to. I will not listen to this propaganda. It is an aggression of Russian Federation towards me personally, towards Ukrainian women, towards Ukraine. They do not want Ukraine to exist. They just want Ukraine to be a colony of Russia. This has nothing to do with NATO. This has nothing to do with US. This has something to do with us wanting to be an independent country and being an independent country. And Putin doesn't want that. He wants to build an empire. He's trying to build an empire, and he is killing right now a lot of people in the world. I think that India knows too well, what it is when somebody doesn't consider you to be an independent nation. Ukraine will fight till the end. Ukraine is a nation. Ukraine has its own history, its own tradition, its own language. It will never be a part of Russia. And I think that Putin actually done a horrible thing of making sure that Ukrainians will never even want to be friends with Russia anymore, because we've had so many lies, so much propaganda, so much blood, and so much tears because of you and because of Ukrainian, because of Russia just wanting to be an empire that, for ages it will be there. The only things that could be done, Putin should be stopped by Russians from the inside. The Russian elite and Russian population should finally realize what Putin is doing, despite of all the propaganda. And Putin should be stopped, and Ukraine should be restored in international recognized borders of 1991, as Russia actually recognized us. And I'm sorry, I will not be listening to this propaganda. It is too painful. It is, too dangerous for you to even say black things on the white and white on the black.
Yes,
thank you. Goodbye.
I understand it completely, Alona. Thank you so much for your time. And let me give the final word to Dr. Sergey. Dr. Sergey, here is Vladimir Putin saying that despite all sanctions from the West, which were designed, according to him, to make Russian people suffer, it has not succeeded. And he has claimed that the share of Russian rubles in international transactions has actually doubled. But we know the fact, the tension is there. It may not have succeeded completely, but one thing that is becoming increasingly clear is that Russia here is being seen as expansionist.
Yes, we can see that the conflict of civilization, Western and Eastern part of the world, is dramatic, and the financial war is like a continuum of the real weapon war. But we have such a positive things that rupee rubles transaction already start, and Russia start to negotiate with other Asian countries and Eastern countries with trading very positively. But first of all, I want to reply to the lady. I'm very sad to say this, but is it true that right now Ukraine is a colony of USA? That is true.
So you are saying that it's a colony of USA. She said that Russia wants it to be the colony of Moscow. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Sergey and Aluna. We are slipping into a short break. Up next, CNN News 18's Sanjay Suri gets us the latest from Ground Zero in Ukraine. Stay with us.
हाँ, हरि प्रकाश। पहले हरि को उसने पुश किया, तो वो वीडियो में देखेंगे राइट हैंड साइड में पहले हरि को पुश किया है। उसके बाद जब मुझे पुश किया तो मैं गिर गया, देखा होगा वीडियो में मैं नीचे गिर गया हूँ। हाँ, मैं स्टेप पे गिर गया। तो अगर मैं साइड में होता तो मैं गिर जाता, तो मैं स्टेप पे गिरा। तो मुझे बचाने के लिए रब्बानी आए, और रब्बानी को तो उसने ऐसे ही पीछे किया, तो उसके बच गया, वो मर जाता। वो अगर नीचे कुछ लोहा होता तो गया था वो।
So, Mir, we just heard Sonu Nigam mentioning the name of the accused as Swapnil. Has the accused been arrested as of now?
At this point, an FIR has been filed in this particular case based on Sonu Nigam's statement. We have visual evidence also that how the incident unfolded on that particular stage while Sonu Nigam was getting off. Police has not really made any arrest in this case at this point, but clearly now with the FIR filed, necessary action will be taken against whoever has in a sense, who is responsible or accused in this particular case. It also depends on how Sonu Nigam plays it out now. He's clearly mentioned that he lost his mind because there was a constant pushing and shoving happening from that person when he was denied that particular selfie, and that caused a lot of problem to his staff who was trying to protect him. In fact, one of the staff members also got seriously injured and could have been even further seriously injured if there was some material on the floor on which he fell from the stage. So clearly that has really upsetted Sonu Nigam, and that's why he's taken that step to file a complaint. And now, since the complaint has been filed, the police will take necessary action anytime soon.
All right, Mihir, stay with us. Let's listen into more reactions that are coming on this story, including that of the police officer.
चेंबूर फेस्टिवल के लाइव कंसर्ट परफॉर्मेंस के बाद में सोनू निगम जी जब स्टेज से नीचे उतर रहे थे, तब एक व्यक्ति ने उनको पीछे से पकड़ा। तो इस बारे में सोनू निगम जी के साथ वाले दोनों लोगों ने उसको बाजू करने का कोशिश किया। तब उस व्यक्ति ने दोनों लोगों को स्टेप से नीचे ढकेला। उसमें एक इंसान को इंजरी हुई। इस सिलसिले में सोनू निगम जी की एफआईआर ली गई, जिसमें आईपीसी सेक्शन 341, 323 और 337 इन सेक्शंस के तहत मामला दर्ज हुआ है। इस घटना में जिस इंसान ने उन्हें पकड़ा था और ढकेला, वो स्वप्निल पाथर पे करके है।
Once again, the true face of the Uddhav Sena, which has now been reduced to a Gundo ki Sena, has come to the fore, with the MLA of Uddhav Sena, Prakash Fatarpekar's son, attacking Sonu Nigam and some other artists merely for a selfie. This shows the sense of arrogance, entitlement, and also the violent politics and the violent ways that are pursued by Uddhav ki Sena. It also shows that this is not a one-off incident, but a serial offender as far as violence is concerned. They have attacked a 60-year-old Navy veteran. They have attacked other people, also physically and violently. And now this attack on artists, including Sonu Nigam. It only shows the mindset and it only shows the approach of politics that Uddhav Sena now believes in. This is complete political frustration, and it also is something that the people of Maharashtra have totally rejected. Today, Uddhavji should tell us whether he will take action on this MLA, whether he will take action on the MLA's son, and whether such kind of politics is condoned by him or condemned by him. This is the true face of Uddhavji ki Sena, and unfortunately, today, once again, we have witnessed the politics of violence and gundagardi that has now become the norm for his people.
Singer Sonu Nigam and his team were manhandled by a Shiv Sena member at a music event in Mumbai's Chembur suburb. The singer was performing at the festival when the son of a local MLA believed to be associated with Uddhav Thackeray's Shiv Sena camp misbehaved with Nigam's manager Saira. The MLA's son wanted to click a photo with Sonu, and that's why he ended up going on the stage. The man then asked Sonu's manager to get off the stage, and when Sonu was getting down from the stage, the man ended up pushing Sonu on the backstage steps. Now, Sonu Nigam has filed a complaint at the Chembur police station, and there's shocking breaking news coming in from Mumbai, where Sonu Nigam and his team were manhandled by a Shiv Sena member at a music event. Our correspondent Mihir is joining us to give us more details on this. Mihir, what exactly happened at the event?
Absolutely. So this was a festival that was taking place, a cultural festival in Mumbai's Chembur area, where Sonu Nigam was part of the finale act. In fact, it was his performance that was, one of the highlights of the show. Now, after his performance at that particular festival, Sonu Nigam was actually trying to get down off the stage. That's when this gentleman approached him and tried to get a selfie. The situation was not such that he could have accommodated that, and his people around him, his aide and security guards, tried to restrain this person from taking that selfie, and that kind of led in.
So much of Kharkiv has been destroyed. The destruction sits all around us, street after street, business after business. The city has been hit harder than any other city in Ukraine for the reason of its location. It simply is within a range of Russian artillery. As close to the border as it is, Russians don't just need to throw long-range missiles to damage this city. But we know all this. What's new? What's new is that people are beginning to rebuild their life in this city, rebuild business and win back the lifestyles that they've lost. They're determined not to let Russian missiles damage the spirit of their city, damage their lives any more than they have already.
Waqf land in India is hardly benefiting actual Muslims on the ground. Several Muslim victims themselves have come out to say. So actually benefiting Waqf boards is not a benefit to ordinary Muslims.
India as a society is still not prepared for live-in relationship. The parents completely not in agreement with an equation of this nature, and the girls do not have the option of coming back, because if the relationship goes wrong, then where do they go back to?
It's okay to float the idea of a Sanatan board, but the community itself stands divided. How does this construct come by? Do they get elected? Do they get nominated? It's again opening a huge can of worms.
You cannot have it both ways, where on the one hand the survey has nothing to do with the documentary, and yet at the same time the documentary is all evil and it needs to be clamped down upon like a ton of bricks.
Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. And we'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with big news coming in from the state of Kerala. It's a huge fillip to those championing the cause of freeing Hindu temples from the clutches of netas and government control. And the big news is that the Kerala High Court in its order has said that those active in politics cannot be appointed as non-hereditary trustees to the temple. The High Court order was while considering a petition against the appointment of two CPI